Pigweed here from the Royal Oak Tavern in Westerville. We're going to review a lager and discuss the history of the domestication of animals. Good evening.
Hey, Pigweed, good to see you.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? So, what about some beer and conversation?
I think that's a great idea. What are we drinking then?
So, this is a special lager.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what that means. It said something about a lager that was interesting both to lager and ale drinkers. But anyway, that's what we got.
German style lager. All
Yeah.
right. I'll try that.
Okay.
What's on your mind?
What's on my mind? So, I'm wondering, why is it that genetically modified plants, how is that different from the fact that we domesticated things?
Well,
Because I mean, everything that we eat and drink is not like, not everything, but most things aren't really the wild thing. It's a modified version of it.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
And
All right.
we modified.
And we modify our beers too.
Yes, we have modified water, yeast, and barley
Yes.
into a delicious beverage.
Into a delicious beverage. So yeah, this is from our friends at the Raven Special. These guys are local, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Peabody.
Peabody, the Raven beer. It's got a nice little quote from The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. So what do you think? Did you get a taste?
I did. It's very good. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I guess more pronounced. There's more of like a breadiness to the
kind of
hops.
reminds me a little bit of a Vienna
to the
lager.
malts.
Reminds me a bit of a Vienna lager.
Yeah, so it's more bodied than the lager that we did American lagers.
Yeah, you're not gonna. This is not like a
Pilsner.
Budweiser. Yeah, and
Yes, it's not a Pilsner. I don't know if that makes it a special.
I'm not getting a lot of hop aroma or
Nah.
flavor, but it's actually very nice. I like it. Well
but
done, guys.
I'm getting some malty aroma and some malty flavors. Very good. Coming in at 5.5, something like that.
and it's relatively pale too for all that maltiness. What do we got? Yeah, 5.5%. All right, fantastic.
Very
So
good.
what is this domestication thing? What?
So what got me? I was just thinking about cats and dogs. I've got cats, and they're entirely useless as far as.
Well, around here, I mean, you don't have a farm.
I don't have a farm, and my dad had a pug. And so, speaking of dogs, there's another useless creature.
Right.
How did they get here? Where did they come from? And
Right.
all of that. And
Yeah.
so I just thought we would talk about the origins of these things, all these farm animals and stuff. Like, they didn't start out in our backyards.
Right.
And so my understanding, there was a time before we domesticated anything and before we decided to have agriculture,
Yeah.
we didn't have towns. There was no reason to have a town.
Right.
We're just another animal on the planet.
Right. Just wandering around.
So wandering around,
Yeah.
eating what's available, killing what's available.
Yeah.
And before that, we were...
And they might have actually wandered like through different regions, like maybe in different seasons.
Yeah.
They'd go here for one season and here for another season.
Makes sense.
But they moved around. You're right. They had no particular reason to stay in one place because why would you? I mean,
if you
unless you had everything you needed in that one place. But
Now there is something that says beer is the thing
that caused civilization.
civilization
That's right, yeah.
because we decided, wait a minute, we need some grains to make this delicious, intoxicating beverage,
and we got to
so
stay
let's-
around till it grows. Yeah, that's right.
It's an interesting theory.
Although they probably made intoxicating beverages from honey and other things before that, but still, there's a strong argument to be made that the cultivation of barley and to make beer is why people settled down in the very
It's
first
time to
place.
slow down. Now, but before that, there were only two creatures out there that were willing to take on animals larger and more dangerous than them.
Yes.
And what they did is they formed packs, and they hunted down a big old bison that they couldn't take down individually. And those two creatures, as far as I know, were wolves and human beings.
Yeah. And somehow or other, wolves... Now, there's the question of whether humans domesticated wolves or wolves domesticated humans, right? Because, the wolves started to realize that, hey, these humans are eating food very similar to us.
Similar tactics.
Yeah, and they would kind of hang around the human settlements. This is one theory anyway. They would kind of hang around the human settlements because that was a place to get the kind of food that they wanted. And some of them became, socially connected with the humans.
Yeah, right. They sort of came towards the fire. I'm supposed. Are we eating raw meat while we're, or do we have fire?
No, we
at
have
this
fire.
point?
Oh, fire! Way before this.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good. And so then, so you toss a little chunk out to one of the friendlier
Right.
wolves.
And that's so. Just by the way, let's talk about the time period.
Let's get some numbers.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the domestication of dogs, it's very hard to pin it down, but it's probably something between 15,000 and 30,000 years ago.
Yes, and we're starting with dogs because that's where we started.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, everybody thinks it's kind of interesting to give food to an animal. Like here you are, you're at some place, and there's all these stupid catfish in this pond, and you're going to put a quarter in and get the little pile of junk to feed. Like, why is that interesting?
It just is.
It just is. For some reason, it's just very interesting to say, here you go, and give some food to some other animal.
Yeah.
So that would be a reasonable explanation for, like, they're eating some meat, and there's a wolf here. See if you want a little bit of this.
And then the meaner and more aggressive wolves are staying away, but you've got
the friendlier ones.
You've got friendlier ones that
Yep.
are coming closer, and eventually that guy starts hanging around, and then there's another friendly one. I mean, that's right. Isn't that how breeding works?
Yeah. So sooner or later, you've got these wolves that are the friendly wolves, the ones that can get along with humans.
And they
the funny
probably
thing
also get the idea that we're hunting together at some point, right?
Yeah. And so humans and wolves, now dogs, have been together for a really long time. And we've kind of evolved together in terms of, like, even our ability to understand the dog and the dog's ability to understand humans. It's,
Now, looking at these numbers, though, Crow Hill, I remember reading a short piece review on a book that suggested that we outcompeted Neanderthals because we had dogs on our side. Now, but those numbers don't quite add up, do they? I mean, I think the Neanderthals kind of 40,000.
Yeah, 40 to 45,000 years ago. Yeah.
So that wouldn't quite match up. But I like the idea.
There is an argument that humans couldn't cross the Bering Land Bridge into North America until the domesticated dogs, because the creatures in North America were so scary and ferocious that without the help of dogs to fight against them, they wouldn't have survived. So
giant boars.
There's nasty stuff. There's saber-toothed tigers and dire wolves and all kinds of nasty. There's some really nasty things living in North America before humans came over.
And the sort of aggressive snapping of dogs on our side made it.
Yeah, once you had dogs fighting with you on your side, then then you had a chance.
Yeah.
That's
So if
theory,
anyone's curious about who came first, dog or cat, dog is way before
dog
anything
is way
else.
before cat, because cats are probably like 9,000 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I've got 7,500 on this one, but anyway.
Nobody knows for sure.
But not even close to.
Not close to dogs.
It's not even close to.
Yeah, dogs have been around for a really long time. And the next one I've got is sheep.
Hold on. I do have one. I do have an interesting dog stat.
So yeah, dogs were probably domesticated from the gray wolf.
Probably from the gray wolf, but this one says here you go. It says there's evidence that a dog very like the present-day Pekingese, about as far from a wolf as you can get, exists in China by the 1st century AD. So I mean, it's a long way from there.
Yeah.
But to think that we had taken that poor threatening gray wolf all the way down to a Pekingese.
Have you've seen the cartoon where there's this, you see a picture of a fire with a bunch of, cavemen sitting around the fire roasting some food, and these two dogs saying, let's go see what could happen. And that's panel 1. And then panel 2, you see this stupid looking poodle.
It says 10,000 years later.
Right. And you see this poodle with like a pink bow on its head wearing a sweater.
What's the worst that could happen?
What happened to you, Wolf? Now you're this sissy dog.
All right, so we have Dog, who is our assistant in life.
Right, yeah. I mean,
And
it's amazing. Dogs are absolutely amazing with the kind of things they do. Yeah.
And so then we figure out a way to, instead of going down and hunting all of the animals, why don't we just keep them around?
Yeah. Right. Now, that's actually a tricky thing, because there are certain characteristics of animals that can be domesticated versus animals that cannot be domesticated. And this was a theme in Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what are the characteristics of the things that? And so let me just go through the list. One is they have to have a diet that humans can economically support, right? Like they have to be mostly herbivores or omnivores. Like you're not going to domesticate a lion because you can't be feeding it meat all the time. They have to have an appropriate growth rate because they have to grow quickly enough to be useful to humans. So you're not going to domesticate an elephant because it takes a really long time to grow. They have to be able to breed in captivity. You can't.
Isn't that funny? That there are some animals that just don't like humping in front of humans.
They have to go off someplace else. Apparently, pandas are difficult in that respect. They have to have a good disposition, not be aggressive. So they must be able to live alongside humans. So this is why we have horses and not zebras, even though they're similar animals, but zebras are apparently nasty. They have to not have a tendency to panic like a deer or a gazelle.
So our early say, I've got sheep, goat, pig.
Right.
Early sheep, goat, pig, but they certainly didn't look like current sheep, goat, pig.
No, they were domesticated from something else. So the sheep was domesticated from something called a wild mouflon, whatever the heck that is. Yeah, and the goat was domesticated from a wild Bezoar ibex. I don't know what that is. Pigs are domesticated from a wild boar.
Right.
Cattle are domesticated from a auroch.
Like the dog, you're going to get the most mellow, accommodating,
version of that.
So you've penned in 20 of these wild creatures. I guess that's how it would work.
Something like that. And then you say, I'm going to pick the better ones.
Yeah, the ones that kind of seem a little calmer than the others.
And I'm going to breed those because those seem nicer.
Right.
Yeah. And then eventually, over time, you're going to breed into or out of the creature various characteristics that you want. It's kind of like dog breeding nowadays. You know, that some breeds of dogs are only a couple hundred years old. That they wanted a dog to do a certain thing, so they bred the dog for a certain characteristic.
It's amazing that it seems fairly rapid that you can alter the. By the time an animal grows up and is ready to breed, it's only 2 years old, right? So you can already sort of identify its characteristics, and then so it doesn't take that long for you to get 10 generations. It's
one person. One person. So they're like the Chesapeake Retriever. Apparently, I think is a relatively recent breed, and some guy just developed that breed.
So I've got now. When you get to if I've got cat at 7,500, apparently there are hundreds of thousands of mummified cats.
Yeah. In Egypt.
Yeah. So we had already taken I don't know what that original Middle Eastern
African
wildcat was.
Whatever it was.
Okay, and then just bred it down to.
What's interesting is there are lots of other kinds of cats that are similar to the domesticated cat. Similar to the African wildcat. That's an ocelot or something like that.
I saw one that said it's the smallest wild, non-domestic cat. And he's really only the size of a house cat.
Yeah.
But they figure it out.
They don't have perhaps the same behavior as a domesticated cat. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Like, how different is domesticated cat from a wild cat.
Right. Well, one thing about that, if the shit hit the fan, my dad's pug is not going to fend for himself.
Right.
While most cats probably
can.
Probably can. This is what I can't figure out.
I think they're sort of lightly domesticated.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
why can't they get on our schedule? How come they're still roaming around at night, knocking things over in the middle of the night? It's like,
Yes.
can't you just sleep at night like we do? I mean,
know,
we've been around for 7,000 years.
I know. Come on. Yeah, I think cats are. This is
There's ornery.
part of the reaction to cats. It's just you arrogant little thing. You know.
Just do what I want.
I know. Why are you like that?
Dogs are just so grateful.
Dogs. I mean, dogs. Yeah, they're happy to see you. The cat is like,
It's like, kind of hungry over here. Bull looks at me. Sheesh.
Yeah. So we've got dogs, sheep, goats, pigs, cattle, cats, chickens.
I was surprised to see the horse coming in a little bit much later. Did
so
you
much
see
later.
that? So I'm seeing
5,500 is what I got.
All right. Well, I've got two different charts here. One of them's 3,500, but still, that's going to put it like 6,000 years away from a sheep.
Yeah. It seems very strange that it took so long to domesticate a horse.
I guess nobody. Maybe it's just like they're not great eating. They're hard to control, and finally said, What if we ride one? Here, y'all, watch this. This is after we develop beer.
Hold my beer. Yeah.
Yes, hold my beer. Watch.
Maybe that was the necessary thing. Maybe they had to develop beer before they could domesticate a horse.
Yes, because we didn't really find any
somebody
reason
had
for
to
it.
say, hold my beer, watch me do this.
Watch me do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh. And then the next guy said, oh, wait a minute. Think how much faster we could kill our enemies. Right? As soon as you could turn something into a weapon of war, then it becomes valuable.
Serious. Right? Yeah, well, so what I have next after horses is donkeys. Which, they don't
I got donkeys and alpaca or other pack animals. So what about oxen? Do you have that close around that time?
I don't even have oxen on my list, but obviously we domesticated them at some point.
Yeah. So you would think that. So these other ones, because there are different animals. You have pets, you have livestock because you're going to eat them, and then you have work animals. Yeah. So that's going to be your horse, your oxen, and your
pulling
donkey,
the plow and all
pulling
that
the plow.
Right.
And I think, do you know that they did not? You didn't have any of those animals in the Americas.
Right. So that's actually a big point in Guns, Germs, and Steel is that.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the germs. Go ahead, do this.
So in Europe, in this. Going from east to west in Europe, you had the same kind of animals. You had a lot of domesticatable animals. Dogs, sheep, goats, pigs, cattle, chickens, horses, all those kind of things were available across this broad area of Europe and into the Near East. Where in the Americas, there aren't... Now, there actually used to be a horse in North America, but it died out before... humans were there to domesticate it. There really weren't any domesticatable large animals in North or South America. Now you eventually had the alpacas and the llamas, and also guinea pigs. But you didn't have beasts of burden. You didn't have the same range of domesticatable animals in North and South America that you had.
And so you know what? So for all of the Aztecs' sophistication in terms of the indoor plumbing and their astronomy and their architecture and all of that.
They didn't have horses.
Well, they didn't have a wheel,
right?
Because she didn't have a cart.
Because you didn't have anything to pull the cart.
Pull the cart, right?
Although
I mean, I guess you could have strapped it onto a Mayan slave.
Exactly. Yeah, you still think that
you still would think that the daggone wheel would have come. I mean, like to mill grain, right? You've got, even if you had to strap some slaves on there. I mean, no shortage of slaves. You're ripping their heart out once a week.
Maybe they didn't have enough because they were killing too many of them. But still, it is amazing they didn't develop the wheel. How in the world did that happen?
I don't know. So it's been a long time. The germs, guns, and steel. Why were we resistant to diseases that the Americans,
because we'd already died from all of them before. So what happened was...
living in close proximity.
We were living in close proximity proximity to sheep, goats, pigs, all this stuff, and they had various diseases. So those diseases caused lots of death in Europe as well.
But they're like, we're dying all the time anyway. Who knows what it's from, right?
But eventually, people developed a resistance. The people who survived developed a resistance to it. So
the European culture just became resistant.
Yes. So Europeans had this resistance to smallpox and all these other kinds of nasty things that we were getting from the animals that were living, in the bedroom next to us, right? And so when we came over to the Americas, they had absolutely no resistance to any of that.
And also, so were they not domesticating, or were they just hunting game? Or they didn't have pens of domesticated animals?
No, because the animals, think of the animals that are available. Deer. You can't domesticate a deer. It spooks too easily.
Right.
The animals that were available in America were not domesticatable. So until the horse came over.
So the boars that we turned into pigs.
They didn't even exist in America.
Weren't in the Americas.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all these animals, they had dogs. The Native Americans did have dogs.
Chihuahuas.
But they didn't have sheep, goats, pigs, cattle, cats, chickens, horses, donkeys.
Right. You're not going to domesticate bison.
Right. Yeah. Apparently, I don't know exactly why, but they were not able to domesticate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the mating thing or their temperament or what it is.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to try to pen one in.
Well, no, you wouldn't want to do that with an auroch either. Apparently, so cattle.
Is this the Middle Earth?
No, cattle were domesticated from a creature called an auroch.
Oh, not an orc.
Not an orc. Yeah,
okay.
Auroch, an auroch. And apparently the original aurochs were these enormous things, like 3 times the size of a cow.
Okay.
And when we domesticated them and bred them down into these smaller critters. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. All right, so that's animals, but that's not the whole side of domestication.
That isn't. There are all of the foods that you eat, that you see growing out in the farm.
Yeah.
See, they're perfectly natural as far as you can tell.
Yeah.
But they also are not their original shape and size.
The vast majority of what we eat are things that would not occur in nature but for humans. Like, now there are some things, like crabs or fish, we haven't domesticated those. But like wheat, barley, corn, apples, most of the fruits and vegetables that we eat are radically different from the original plants that they came from.
Probably like those crab apples.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's some horrible, the original apples.
Yeah,
right?
some horrible little thing.
So who figured out that you can genetically modify?
Yeah, well, apparently what they did was there was a whole bunch of crab apples or whatever, and they'd pick the better ones and they'd plant those, and progressively over time. And think about the cognitive skill that was involved in
also
that.
The patience, because like we're saying about dogs, in 10 years you've got 5 generations of dogs already going on. This seems like plants. Mm-hmm. Take a while to see if your little experimentation has worked.
I'm just amazed, even at the break from understanding that if you plant this thing, the same thing will grow. Like a chimpanzee doesn't know that.
No, right.
You can't. A chimpanzee is not going to take an apple, plant it in the ground so that an apple tree will grow. But somewhere along the line, humans started to realize.
And then it's the seed.
Yeah, if you take this seed and you do this with it, this thing will grow. And not only that, but if you take the better ones and plant those, you get the better ones. Yeah.
So what about a seedless watermelon?
Yeah, isn't that weird? I don't even like them as much. I think the ones with seeds.
I like spitting the seeds. I like eating watermelon outside.
Yeah, and spitting the seeds. It's fun. See how far you can spit the stupid seed. But I think they taste better, the ones with seeds. But a lot of these things, the earliest plants that we cultivated were wheat, barley, lentils, and peas, and then rice in Asia.
What kind of time frame are we talking about? When did we start? When did science enter? So this is like pre-science science.
Way
right?
pre-science. Yeah, it's like agricultural science before we knew what science was.
Yeah.
But this is all started about 10,000 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so this was the domestication of plants was a big part of the settling, going from a wandering lifestyle to a settled lifestyle.
Right, so that we could make beer.
Yes.
Which that's my
You're
story.
sticking with that.
I'm sticking with it.
Okay.
But there's something that we're like, all right, wait a minute. Just instead of just scrounging around on what's on the ground, we were like, you know what? We can control this.
Yes.
And then we very quickly realized that we can manipulate.
Yes. So they would find some plant, some scrawny little terrible plant that was, decently edible, and they'd find a better version of it and plant that, and then a better version of that and plant that. And eventually they would transform it from this nasty little scrawny thing into what we have today, which is amazing.
Here, speaking of nasty little scrawny things, the most iconic example of selective breeding is the North American sweet corn, which is bred from a barely edible teosinte plant. Natural corn was first domesticated 7,000 BC and was dry like a raw potato. I mean, look at that thing.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
So it looks a little bit like the corn kernels if you stacked them on top of each other, for about 5 of them.
Yeah.
And somehow that has turned into...
So somebody found this plant that was sort of barely edible. Barely. And it's like, okay, we can barely eat this. But they said, if we grow more of it, and then pick the best, we can slowly turn it. And the transition from that scrawny thing into an ear of corn is just astonishing.
It is astonishing.
And how did they know to do this? It's because it's not
right. So it's not after the scientific revolution where we're
but it's not obvious. It's not obvious that if you pick the better seeds and plant them, that you'll get that crop. That's not obvious.
No.
But somehow they figured that out, and all over the world they figured that out, and they did that with all these. Wheat. Wheat isn't a natural thing. We domesticated that. Barley, lentils, none of these things originally were in the form that they're in today.
And here's this one. So we're talking about, what did I say? 7,000 BC. So, this is 9,000 years ago we started doing this one. But if you look at this watermelon, this is a 17th century painting. So this is a still life. It's gorgeous painting. Yeah. But that watermelon
doesn't look anything like a modern watermelon.
Looks weird. And then even in they said, well, maybe it's an unripe watermelon, but they said the black seeds in the painting suggest that it was in fact ripe. And it's unrecognizable. I mean, except for there's a little bit of they're like sections of the pinkish fruit, divided by white inedible stuff. But this was only in the 1700s. Is what a watermelon
it's pretty astonishing that what we have now, and now we have these silly seedless things.
Now the bananas. Now you don't want to wade in on the banana debate. If you get on
bananas. So the problem with bananas is apparently most bananas are grown not through sexual reproduction, but through something like cloning.
Yes.
So you have this crop of bananas that becomes the banana that everybody eats.
Right, the Cavendish.
Yeah. And then some parasite comes along. We were talking in a different show about the purpose for sex. The purpose for sex is to confuse the parasites. You have this banana that eventually the parasites are going to catch up with it and wipe it out.
Yes, so it's kind of weird that we have... I mean, when you go into the grocery store, there is just a banana.
Yeah.
Banana.
But around the world,
banana means the Cavendish.
Yeah, but around the world, there are so many different types of banana.
But for the very reasons that you mentioned, why don't we have a larger variety? I know when I go to the Mexican market, there's some little stubby ones that are actually called apple bananas. Mm-hmm. There's plantains, which are actually kind of probably not even the same strain.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And then there's some purple ones. So that's at least 3 instead of 1. But there are dozens.
But if you go down to the islands, they have lots of little weird bananas down there.
How is the Cavendish thing, and why isn't that recognized as a bad idea for the reasons that you brought up about a single parasite.
Well, yeah, why not have multiple? I don't know why they don't have multiple different
But they
versions
are
of
amazing.
onions.
I just don't know how in the middle of winter they're 39 cents a pound and they're not grown locally. They're
Right.
all coming from thousands of miles away,
Yeah,
picked green, and then they continue to ripen.
yeah.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, well, yeah, human ingenuity is
Yeah, how about the
absolutely-
carrot? How
The
do you
carrot,
feel about
yeah.
that?
So I like carrots, but if you look at this thing that the carrot was grown from, the wild carrot, it does not look appetizing at all.
At all. And it says they were
It
thought...
kind of looks like if you were to go out and find. So there's another plant that grows around here, the Queen Anne's lace. That supposedly the root of the Queen Anne's lace is edible, as is the root of a dandelion. By the way, so you pull that thing up and you get that root. It basically looks like what this wild carrot looks like.
And somehow we have turned that into delicious,
Yeah.
perfect orange
nice carrots. How we did that, I don't know. Like, nobody did that with Queen Anne's lace or with dandelions, but...
So we've been doing this thing for 9,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now people are genetically modifying things.
Yeah.
What are people getting mad about? We've always been genetically modifying. What does GMO have to do? Why is that a problem?
Right.
Just modifying. We've been doing it.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because we have been genetically modifying plants for a long time, but we did it by taking a seed and planting it and taking another seed
Grafting.
and planting it. Yeah, grafting, sure. But what they're doing now is they're going into the DNA of the plant and they're pulling the DNA out of this other plant and injecting it into this other thing, which actually does happen in nature. There's this thing called gene transfer where genes from other species actually come into another plant. It actually does happen naturally, but we're doing it in the laboratory. And I think part of the concern about it is just sort of the Frankensteinish aspect of it. It's like we're messing with things that we don't understand. Well, actually, they kind of do understand it, but we're messing with stuff in what seems to be an unnatural way.
So you're doing things. You're making them insect resistant.
Right.
You're making them drought resistant. You're making them higher productivity. They're so I don't know.
You're making.
I'm not sure what Monsanto is doing that's making people so upset. Other than the general idea, unless they can prove that. I mean, if you're injecting, animal genes into plants, and now they grow teeth.
You're gonna have a tomato that says "Hi there." Right.
I guess once you get to the island of Dr. Moreau, maybe maybe that is a problem.
I certainly don't want to defend Monsanto or any of those guys. But the basic concept of genetically modified plants is basically just what we've been doing all along.
That's what I'm seeing. So I'm not sure why they're mad about it. And if I had two choices to genetically modify a plant to make it bug resistant, or spraying pesticides on it, I think the GMO makes more sense.
Yeah. Another thing that a lot of people don't understand about pesticides is a lot of pesticides are natural things because plants have to produce their own pesticides in order to fight against pests, right? Because otherwise they die. Yeah. There's this constant chemical warfare going on between plants and pests.
Right.
So a lot of pesticides are just things that plants naturally produce that we then produce in huge quantities and spray them on the plants to deal with the pests and things. But still, I mean, I'm not thrilled with the idea of spreading all these chemicals around, but that kind of thing, that's what makes agriculture work. That's why we're able to grow as much food as we can.
Yes, that's why the Malthusian prospect of the population outgrowing our ability to grow food failed, and why 100 years ago, 50% of Americans were involved in the agricultural business, and now we have 2%.
Right.
And
we're making more food.
More food than we need.
Yes.
And shipping it elsewhere. Yes. So it's, I am...
GMO seems like a good thing. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's been coming in the news recently, like with JFK Jr.
Right.
and the Cassie Means and all these other people talking about all the crazy stuff that's going on with food. We're not really talking about that.
No.
Yeah.
Listen, the fact. Can I bring up my King's Hawaiian
Yes.
buns that I have over here that we did on a previous show about 6 months ago? And I'm wondering, why is these buns so soft and delicious?
Let me have 'em. King's Hawaiian, they still feel soft.
What's the date on there? When did I buy them?
This was September of last year. So
they're almost
they're months old.
18 months old.
No, September of 23.
23, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we're here in 2025.
And they still feel soft.
They still feel soft. And they probably would still be delicious.
Yeah.
But that's telling me
something's weird going on.
Something's weird because I just bought some French bread 3 days ago that I got to throw out because you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It lasted 3 days.
So,
and I don't think it has anything to do with the sorbitan monostegrate.
There's some other kind of junk they're throwing in there. Yeah.
Phosphates. So yes, no, I'm not talking about that.
We've been modifying our food forever.
Yes, forever.
That's what we do, and that's good. That doesn't mean that it's always good all the time. Well, yeah.
Is there an undomesticated animal that you would like to make a pet? Like, what if you feed a domesticated snake that you could have around the house?
I don't want a snake. No, I don't like snakes.
A wombat. I mean, they're already pretty. Like a koala bear. They could probably have one. I don't know,
in your house. Like hawks. I mean, some people haven't really domesticated hawks, but they have trained hawks to,
Well, and the parrots seem to be.
Yeah, parrots. Yeah. Crows are supposed to be fairly smart. Ravens and things like that. What other kind of an animal would I like to have? Or honestly, I think the reason that we built houses was to keep animals out of them.
That's weird that we decided that
to bring some in.
It's like, I know. Well, we used to have outhouses where we pooped outside, and then decided
to poop inside. But still, like animals. I mean, animals are great, but I'm not sure there's an animal that I want to invite into the house.
I think we got enough.
Yeah,
I mean, cats and dogs. That's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, animals are great, rats. And I like them and all that, but I don't want them in the house.
All right, well, congratulations to human beings,
to humanity. We've been kicking butt for thousands of years.
I mean, yeah. Before we had pants, we were already figuring out animals and plants to make our lives better.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, to us.
We're amazing. Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.